left, though, is a question I wanted to ask. How do I go about contacting, maybe letting you know or somebody else know that the branch is like, there's partial of it there? We'd like it cut so that we can put that, coat it so it doesn't get diseased or whatever in that area.
You don't really have to do that to the
Okay.
coatings. It won't get a disease.
Well, it's a really sharp thing sticking out of there. I mean, can we just cut that and not worry
If you
about
just send
it?
me an email, I'll have it trimmed up for you.
Okay, if we had a chainsaw, we would do it.
No, don't
Still
worry
don't
about
have
it. It won't take a couple minutes.
But I
You can leave
mainly
me an email.
Okay. I mainly wanted to say thank you to Steve because he did a very awesome job. The water department, Steve.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm sure Steve will too. I'll pass it on.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Bzura?
I was going to ask a question. I wanted to make sure I understand the process with GFL and liquidated damages and how we go about assessing charges for missed pickups that aren't rectified by noon the following day. You've been nice enough to give us some information on that, but whether we can go backwards or whether today going forward, getting the complaint through iCare, we know about it, GFL knows about it. How do we do the follow-up on noon the next day, and how do we make sure that, COVID or not, if the service level isn't what we're paying for, that we apply liquidated damages to GFL?
That has to go through the call center. I like I said in my email, Brenda tracks those because those are where the complaints come from. And even when I get a complaint in an email, I'll forward it to Brenda and to Sam from GFL. And Brenda she keeps a spreadsheet and follows up to make sure they get done by noon the next day. For example, the invoice that we had, the $900, that was probably the peak of when we really started having a lot of problems, and nobody was really keeping track of how to assess them because you have to have that time frame and verify that it was picked up. So Brenda is doing that, but her initial list she gave me probably had 50 or 60. It was a pretty extensive list, and I asked her for a list of the missed stops, and I wrote her back and says, I need to know how many of these didn't get picked up at noon the following day.
How would she know that?
She's following up with Sam, with GFL.
So she's got the address. Sam is going to confirm whether or not they were able to make it out to those properties that filed the complaint.
She may. I probably need to speak to Brenda to find out exactly how she's following up, but she has been following up and sending me the list of people, the ones that have not been addressed.
Okay.
Since we have assessed the liquidated damages, especially 900, I think as far as I know, I think they're getting them all before noon the next day. They're making an effort. I mean, I understand they're having a lot of problems, and I know that even many, you might even see them, sometimes they're working to 7, 8 o'clock at night because they are missing the stops. I mean, but that's no excuse for bad service. I mean, we got to hold them to the contract, and we are. There's a process that we have to follow through, and it's kind of tough, to have to follow through on each and every one of those to make sure that it got picked up. I would probably, I can find out, but if you have specific questions how she's doing, you might want to contact Brenda because she's pretty much keeps track of all the complaints because that's where they go through.
Yeah, I can talk to her. I
don't know.
I want to make sure that there is a process because the number of complaints are sizable. It's entirely possible that they're resolving lots of them by noon the next day, but because of the number of complaints and because consistently 17 to 18, 18 to 19, 19 to 20. We've got excuses about a supervisor. COVID surely has been a problem, but if year in and year out we can count on this many, I don't know that I'm cutting them any slack for COVID. Our contract says if they provide poor service, we can charge them for it, and I think the city should have a process that helps identify whether or not they fixed it. Mathematically, statistically, driving around neighborhoods, my gut tells me that they've not picked up a missed household more than 10 times before noon this year, and we've only charged them $1,000. The list that we got from Brenda was 2,000 houses.
Yeah, I've seen that list.
I don't know that we could have charged them 2,000 times 100, but I also know that it was way more than 2,000 that they missed. So not looking to go after them, not looking to penalize them, not looking to be too harsh because of COVID, but when one vendor is provided, service on not such a great level over the course of the past 3 years. They're paying a lot of money. They definitely use the contract to their advantage, and I think the city of Taylor should do the same. So I'd like to make sure we have that process in place going forward.
And I agree with you, and if you noticed, the last contract, I increased it from
Yeah,
50
and that-
to 100 because
Absolutely.
we're having so many pickup problems, so I increased I doubled it. the liquid.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and if they pick it up by noon the next day, we know that trucks break down, we know that people call in, I'm okay with that, but at the end of the day, if they're not getting the job done, there's no reason for us to pay 100% of that bill when our contract says they're liable for $100 per house, per incident. I think we should implement that contractual provision and charge them for it.
I agree. And just to let you know too, like when I get a complaint directly for rubbish, and usually when I get them directly, it comes through the website. If you go to DPW, you see my picture and it has a little email link. I get emails for every department. I just kind of forward them to whoever is responsible. On the rubbish ones, I'll take those. Those are probably the only complaints that I receive personally. Other ones all go through the call center. When I get those, I forward them to Brenda so she can get a log of it, and to Sam. And everyone that I send, I know Sam responds to me in an email, says done. I'll get it like the next a couple hours or by the end of the day. He'll just put done, picked up, done, picked up. So I know no one goes out and checks it. Of course, we don't have the time. I certainly wouldn't have the time to drive out to each resident.
They'll usually send in I met with Brenda, I think last week or so, kind of discussed this, how the process works. And apparently this supervisor they got now is really good. She's really working well with him. But what they'll usually do is they'll send a picture or something like that, or let her know or whatever. But again, I agree with Councilman Bzura that when you have, they will call in and say, hey, our guys were out there till 8 or 9 o'clock. They missed this street and missed this street. They will be out there tomorrow to pick them up. So they're pretty good about that, letting her know either the morning of, or the day before, or something like that. But, she was even saying we have to do a little better job of making sure they're doing everything, because there's people complaining that it's been days since their stuff been picked up. And like Councilman Bzura said, it's probably one of our biggest contracts. And we spend a lot of money on that contract, and I expect them to live up to that contract. And,
I agree.
Like Danny says, I'm okay. I understand the COVID crisis, all that stuff, but at the end of the day, you still have to abide by your contract, especially.
And we do. And it's a public service, and it's probably one of our biggest, most visible public service contracts that we have. But I want to add, Sam from GFL, who is our municipal rep. I know that they miss a lot of stops, but they're really good. They work with us, and they are very responsive when we do. They are conscious about picking it up. I'm not trying to stick up for them, but I got to give credit where credit's due. I'll call them and ask them to do something, to pick something up that might be a great part in the contract. He won't even argue. He just go pick it up.
Well, I've seen pickup trucks driving around,
I got a bulk pickup issue right now for our dumpster services, our commercial, which we don't offer. And they're complaining that we're not getting special pickup. I said, well, if it doesn't fit in the dumpster, you don't get recycling, you don't get compost, you don't get bulk pickup. It's not the service that we offer for the commercial pickups. And we only have a handful of them. And we're going back and forth, and I'm trying to deal with it. And I just asked Sam, can you just go pick it up? And there was a lot of stuff. There's washer and dryer. And he just picks it up. He didn't even argue. So yeah, he just picks it up. So there are some things like that he does help us out on. And I'm not trying to make any excuses for the missed stops, because that is an issue, and they know it's an issue. And when we hold them to the contract and we do assess the liquidated damages, you do see a response that's positive. So it does work.
If they have other communities that have a similar fee, if I was Sam, and I don't know, I'm making it up, Southgate, Romulus, and Lincoln Park always zapped me, and Taylor never did. Taylor might be the fourth community I go and make those pickups to.
You're right.
So, and I'm not saying they do that. I think we all agree that there's a contract. You doubled it for a reason. It's in the contract. There are a lot of missed pickups, and if they're not doing what they're contractually being paid to do, then they should abide by the contract and pay that $100 fee. So I think we all agree on that going forward.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on the eye care. If somebody complains on the eye care, that goes to Brenda,
Yeah,
correct?
I think it goes directly to GFL.
I know it goes
They
to
got the
them, but
link.
does it
The
come-
CRMs will go directly to them. So they know, but we'll still, like me, I'll reiterate, I won't send it to their customer service, I send it right to Sam, or I'll call.
Well, I know they get it, you know, it goes
Yeah.
directly to them, but it also goes to Brenda, correct?
Oh, yeah,
So
the
that she can
CRMs,
keep track
yeah,
of
we
that.
can see on
Okay.
record, yeah.
So not just them calling in, she actually has the eye care app too.
Yep.
I think
Yeah,
that's,
because we've been on them about closing them out, you know, because we go through the CRMs periodically and make sure, you know, if you don't, you'll find 3-4 months ago, you have a bunch of open that we know we did and they haven't closed them, and the majority of them are from GFL, and we have to call them and say, hey, you know, these got to get closed out, or in other words, they're in our CRM as a open.
and that's why I asked about how we know, because we got a list from Brenda, and there's 2,000 houses that missed, but I can't look at that spreadsheet and say, yeah, 123 Main Street got picked up by noon the next day. So if the spreadsheet doesn't tell us that, how does the call center know, and how do you know, and how do we charge $100? And the absence of that information might lead to us only charging them $1,000. So I
am relying on the
want,
call center.
want it
I'll
to
let
get
you know.
better and, you know, improve that going forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to discuss?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Bzura?
I'm just curious if there's an update on the city festival, if a decision's been made, if we're still plowing ahead.
Don't, okay, I was gonna say, I saw the mayor leave, so I think